It's Sunday, January 6th, and we're finally getting the first good rainstorm of the 2019 rain season. We've just got over an inch of rain from yesterday and another big front coming through today, Sunday, to add a bunch of rain and snow to our totals that we so desperately need this year. The first snow survey of the year was just held, and conditions in the High Sierra are a little bit below average. Today, here at 3,200 feet, is that steaming up on you? Today here at 3,200 feet, we're just below the snow level. So it's snowing good above 4,000 feet. They're expecting well over a foot of snow in the Sierra tonight that we so desperately need. Conditions got so bad Sunday night, they had to close Interstate 80 crossing the Sierra due to low visibility, blowing snow, and spinouts. Big gust front coming through right now. Today we're relaxing on the back porch back again with the Solo stove. Don't worry, I'm not going to burn down the back porch, the wood deck. I've got the Weber grill underneath the Solo stove and some protection here. As the Solo stove is a very safe, fire burning, little wood burning stove. So Jenny and the kids are still in Spain visiting Grandma for Christmas while I had to work, and one of the things I had to do for work, besides that trip to Hong Kong, was take a check ride. Every 9 months, an airline pilot's required to take a check ride, and that's what I want to talk about today. So no matter how many years you've been in the airline industry and going through and getting all your ratings and taking all your check rides to get those ratings, check rides are still a very stressful event. And in the airline industry, it's required that we have a check ride every 9 months. Flying modern-day airliners is such a reliable endeavor that things rarely ever happen and go wrong. In 19 years of flying it, I've only shut down one engine, actually had one engine failure. That was on that trip from Hawaii to Los Angeles. We did the trained procedure and everything worked out so smoothly that most of the passengers, in fact I would say all of the passengers slept right through the entire operation of an engine failure and coming on in to land in Los Angeles on one engine. But because things are so reliable and the flying can become so boring, boredom and complacency become your biggest enemies. And the only way to combat that is through training. And as mandated by the FAA, we as airline pilots are required to have a check ride every 9 months and review all the procedures for when things go wrong. Checking the radar screen, we got the gust front coming through right now as the next storm approaches. That's why I enjoy being out here and watching these weather events as they blow through. It gets quite gusty. All of our check rides in the airline industry, in fact, all of our training in the airline industry today is all done in simulators. State-of-the-art, full-motion simulators, usually done at the company headquarters. A typical check ride profile will take it'll take 2 days in the simulator. You'll spend 3 or 4 days total over there getting your check ride accomplished. Huge banks of simulators replicating the exact cockpit of your aircraft on full motion sims with excellent visuals. Anytime you switch airplanes, you have to get a new type rating in that airplane. You cannot be current and qualified in more than one airplane at a time unless you're a maintenance pilot. And all that training to get checked out in the new airplane is done in the simulator as well. As a matter of fact, the first time you fly the real airplane is with a check airman, an instructor pilot, on a revenue flight. But these simulators are so realistic and the training is so demanding that by the time you get to the real airplane, you find it much easier to fly than anything you did in the simulator. So when you come back for your 9-month check ride, you know you're in for a very stressful event and you need to be prepared. Besides the usual emergencies like engine failures, emergency depressurizations, emergency descents, which are practiced to the point to where they become absolutely routine, each time you come back for a check ride, folks are reviewing historical accidents that have happened and trying to learn from those mistakes. And since this is all driven by the FAA, that process takes quite a while. In fact, after an accident happens, it may take a year or two before they sort it all out and figure out exactly what happened and what there is to learn from it. And then it takes another couple of years to get that approved and into a training program. So right now, we're just now emphasizing events that happened all the way back in 2009, particularly the Air France crash, where loss of reliable instrument indications led to the crews stalling the aircraft all the way from cruise altitude into the water. Also in that same year, I believe, was the Colgan Air disaster. Icing conditions led to loss of aircraft control, stalling the aircraft. So right now, emphasis items are on back to basic airmanship, stalls and falls, stalling the aircraft, maintaining aircraft control, unusual airspeed indications, unreliable airspeed indications that can lead you into that sort of a condition. And that's a very insidious problem to have. Unreliable airspeed indications. Until you experience it yourself, do you realize just how confusing and difficult of a situation that might be to get your mind wrapped around? But if you practice it a couple times in the sim, even that procedure can become fairly easy to manage. We also get a glimpse as to the future of the industry, and it's obvious that retirements are increasing and hiring is increasing, so experience levels are dropping. A couple of the trends that we're seeing is the FAA is directing training to get away from rote memorized procedures. What we used to call it in the military is boldface, what we've called in the airlines is red box items. Memorized procedures are now, they're still there, they're just on a card, a quick reference card, and now you are to maintain aircraft control and call for the card if it's one of those type of emergencies. So you still need to memorize what are the memorized procedures on that card to be able to direct the pilot not flying to the correct source for the information to deal with this emergency. Another trend we're seeing across the industry is a standardization, a continuing evolution of the standardization of training across a wide fleet of aircraft. And this has been going on for years, but the airline industry has gone through a recent huge consolidation. That means a lot of mergers. An airline cannot operate under a single certificate until the FAA approves all the operations of the two different airlines merged into one under one certificate. Each airline has its own individual training and culture and ways of doing things, and those two issues have to be resolved. Now you've got one airline with a wide fleet of aircraft, unlike Southwest Airlines, and by the way, rest in peace Herb Kelleher, an absolute maverick in the industry, developed Southwest Airlines using just one type of aircraft with the very simple philosophy of take care of your people and they will take care of your company, virtually unheard of in the airline industry. One of the most revered airline CEOs the airline industry has ever seen, Herb Kelleher, just passed away. So now you got a fleet of aircraft, a wide variety of aircraft. You want to develop a training program so that as you move from one aircraft to the next, training cycles, that's why major airlines have such high expenses. One of the many reasons is anytime somebody retires off of the 777, that'll create like 6 training cycles as everybody moves up the ladder. And you want that training to be as relatively seamless as possible. That means amongst Boeing aircraft, there's a certain amount of familiarity, but when you're mixing Airbus and Boeing aircraft, there's a big difference in philosophy and training. And guess who's going to win that argument? Airbus. Yes, that's right, you heard it here first. Triggers and flows are coming to a Boeing aircraft near you. And all you Boeing guys, are going to be moaning and groaning, but it's not that bad. I spent 2 years on the Airbus. It's not a bad program. It's nothing really different than what you're used to today using written checklists. It's just a matter of flowing through the checklist independently on your own and then referencing the checklist to verify that everything was done. Triggers and flows coming soon.
You still do the checklist, you just do this pre-memorized little flow of switch flipping and then reference the checklist and make sure it's all done.
This applies to normal procedures only. Now, for some of you old-timers out there, you were trained to do ILS approaches, and then you were trained to do non-precision approaches, VORs, NDBs, localizers, ADF approaches. Well, today, with today's technology and GPS, those instrument approaches are broken down into just two types of approaches, ILS approaches and non-ILS approaches. So now basically you only have two procedures to know. And because of today's technology with GPS and vertical guidance, we can take a lot of those non-precision approaches, add vertical guidance to it, instead of the old style where you just had a straight line to drive at hard altitude, then you descend to another hard altitude, drive straight ahead until you saw the airport and then land. Now we can add vertical guidance and give you a glide path, a virtual glide path, get the aircraft set up on about a 3-degree glide path so that by the time you break out of the weather, you can see the end of the runway and you just continue on that same steady glide path and land. There's no more of this dive and drive, level off sort of thing. Greatly enhancing safety in a critical phase of flight. ILS and non-ILS procedures. On every other check ride training cycle, once every 18 months, you do a LOFT, or a line-oriented flight training evaluation. This is where you take all your training events, and which come in short little choppy bits where you do the event, stop the simulator, reset it, do another event, stop the simulator and reset it. This time you simulate an entire flight from takeoff to landing with some sort of event and a series of distractions during that event to evaluate you and your crew member to work together as a team to resolve the situation and do everything exactly by the books. In our case this year, it was a departure out of London, Heathrow, which was great because that's where we fly out of all the time, with very poor weather, departing for Los Angeles, and then having some sort of event at level off that forced you into a diversion into another airport, and the weather precluded you from returning to London. So this gave you an event to go through all the checklists and do all the procedures and properly simulate all the crew coordination that is required, coordinating with ATC, coordinating with the company, coordinating with the flight attendants, coordinating with the passengers to bring this aircraft back to a logical conclusion at your diversion airport. Having things prepared in advance to divert to an airport
instead of returning to your departure station.
And when that curtain goes up, it's just like a big performance on the big stage. It's just you and the check airman, maybe an FAA inspector in the simulator there with you, watching your every move and making sure you do everything correctly. And it replicates a very stressful experience. And it ensures that you've got the right training to get the job done correctly. So now it's time to wind down after all that training and get ready for the next trip. See you here.